A combat knife hovered inches from Bruce Lee's ribs. Metal caught the fluorescent light. Close enough to feel. A wall clock clicked. 5 seconds. Boots shifted on canvas mats. A hand drifted toward a waistband behind him. No warnings. No speeches. Just breath and distance. The training hall at Fort Calder went silent as Major Elena Cross stepped forward. Blade low, eyes steady. The rule was simple. One clean exchange. If Bruce fell, the session ended. If she did, she addressed the entire unit. Bruce did not raise his hands. He watched the knife. He watched the shoulders. Someone whispered his name. Someone checked the clock. Then Bruce leaned in, not to strike, to listen. The knife moved, and the room learned something it was not ready for. The knife drifted closer, not swung, carried. Steel hovered beside Bruce Sip's ribs, close enough to feel air move. The wall clock clicked. Once, twice. A boot scraped across canvas. Someone swallowed. Bruce Lee stood barefoot on the mat, hands low, shoulders soft, eyes steady, no fighting stance, no warning posture, just balance. Major Elena Cross held the combat knife in a forward grip, elbow tucked, wrist aligned. The blade pointed where organs lived. 5 seconds. That was the rule. If Bruce backed away, the session ended. If he slipped, she pressed. If he fell, the unit walked. The training hall at Fort Calder felt smaller than it had 10 minutes earlier. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Sweat darkened the edges of the mats. Gun oil lingered near the equipment rack. 8 witnesses formed a loose arc. 2 instructors, 4 operators, 1 medical sergeant, 1 logistics captain watching the clock. Behind Bruce, a chair shifted. A shadow moved wider. A hand drifted toward a waistband. Bruce noticed. He did not turn. He watched Cross-Sip's shoulders. He watched her breathing, short pulls through the nose, jaw set, weight centered. She had the posture of someone used to command, compact strength, practical muscle, scars on the knuckles. Cross stepped inside, arm steps, reach. The knife followed. Bruce did not retreat. He exhaled once. Silence. The timer beeped softly to mark the first second. Cross spoke without raising her voice. 1 exchange. Bruce inclined his head, a small bow, not submission, acknowledgement. The blade wavered for half a heartbeat. Not fear. Calibration. Bruce shifted his lead foot 3 inches. Canvas whispered. From the semicircle, someone whispered his name. Another person leaned forward. The medic loosened a strap. Cross tested distance with a shallow step. The knife traced a line through air. Not a strike. A question. Bruce answered with stillness. The clock clicked again. Cross moved her left hand to frame his shoulder. The blade angled toward the lower ribs. A clean entry path. Bruce felt the draft along his side. Felt the room hold its breath. For a moment, balance disappeared. Not from Bruce. From the space between them, a second presence crept closer behind him. Close enough to brush fabric. Bruce tilted his head, just enough to listen. Then he leaned forward, not to attack, to speak. Hold the knife tighter, he said quietly. Cross blinked. The blade lifted. Instinct took over. That was the opening. Not the kind most people see. The kind that lives in timing. Bruce shifted, minimal, precise. And the room learned in the first 2 seconds that this was not a demonstration. This was a reckoning. The knife passed where Bruce had been. Air snapped. Someone gasped. Bruce was already moving, not fast. Certain, the knife stopped. Not because it missed, because Cross chose to stop it. Metal hovered at Bruce Sip's side, her wrist tight, her breathing louder now. Bruce stood a half step inside her range, hands still low, eyes calm. The semicircle held. No one spoke, no one moved. Then the logistics captain cleared his throat. The sound felt disrespectful. He swallowed it back down. Cross lowered the blade to her thigh. Not surrender, control. Again one of the instructors began. Cross cut him off with a small glance. The room obeyed that glance. It always had. Bruce nodded once, a quiet permission to speak. Cross's jaw worked as if chewing through a thought. Her gum had disappeared somewhere between the first second and the second. Now there was only tension. This base runs on proof, she said. Short line. No ornament. She tapped the clock with the back of her knuckles. A soft, hollow sound. Miles, times, scores, pass or fail. Her eyes stayed on Bruce Sip's chest. not his face. As if a face could lie. Bruce waited, not passive, present. Cross took one step back, then another, creating space, the way a commander creates room for a decision. A faint smear of chalk dust marked her palm. From grip drills, from ropes, from the last person who tried to test her and left embarrassed. I built my rank on numbers, she said, and I protected people with those numbers. The medic shifted his weight. Canvas squeaked. A small sound. A warning that bodies existed here. Cross's voice tightened. Stories do not save anyone. Bruce Sepp's gaze softened. Not pity. Recognition. He glanced briefly toward the shadow behind him. The hand near the waistband froze. That hand slowly withdrew, like an animal backing away from a fire. Cross noticed that movement. Her eyes flicked once. A crack of irritation. Someone had tried to add danger without permission. Bruce spoke low enough that only the front row caught it. No surprises. 2 words. No threat in them, yet the room changed shape. Cross drew a slow breath. It trembled at the end. For the first time, her confidence showed a seam. I keep hearing the same thing, she said. Speed, precision, something that does not fit. She lifted the knife again, not at him, beside her face where everyone could see it. If this is real, she said, it belongs here. Bruce did not argue. He did not smile. He only held her eyes and gave her what no one on this base gave her for free. Respect. Cross Sepp's shoulders eased by a fraction, then hardened again, because easing felt dangerous. Terms, she said. 1 word. A door closing. Cross moved first. Not explosive, controlled. The knife led her entry, shoulder following, hips driving forward with practiced economy. Bruce shifted half a step to his right, canvas whispering under bare feet as steel passed close enough to stir the air beside his ribs. Someone behind him inhaled sharply. Cross did not slow. She stepped inside his space and framed his shoulder with her free hand, trying to anchor him long enough to cut. Bruce rotated his hips, just enough to change the angle. Her grip brushed fabric and found nothing. The wall clock clicked. Cross reset and surged again. Closing distance with a short burst meant to overwhelm timing. Bruce leaned back by inches. The blade traced empty air. He felt heat along his side. The medic adjusted position. A chair creaked. Cross tightened her jaw. Confidence slipped, barely visible but real. She changed levels, dropped her weight, and drove toward his center, attempting to collapse his base. Bruce slid laterally and touched her wrist. Not a grab, a redirect. Her knife arm drifted wide. Bruce stepped inside. For a fraction of a second, their shoulders brushed. Cross reacted on instinct, slamming her forearm forward to create space. Bruce absorbed it on his frame. Receiving rather than resisting, his balance rocked. Just briefly, the room leaned with him. A boot slipped on sweat. Bruce caught himself on the edge of his heel. Recovered. Barely. Cross saw it. She lunged with full commitment, blade driving toward his lower ribs. Bruce rotated away and answered with a short vertical palm to her sternum. Not power, placement. The impact stopped her forward momentum completely. Her breath left in a sharp grunt. She staggered back 2 steps, hands dropping instinctively to her chest, eyes widening. Bruce was already retreating, returning to neutral, hands low. Silence swallowed the hall. Cross blinked once. Then again, she had taken harder strikes. She had endured worse impacts in training, but this felt different. It felt precise, surgical. Her breathing stuttered before she forced it steady. Frustration crept into her expression. A quiet heat behind the eyes. She rolled her shoulders and advanced again. Guard tighter now, movements less casual. She tested him with a quick slash. Missed, then another, missed again. Bruce Sepp's head moved inches at a time. Never more. Every evasion economical. Every answer restrained. Cross began to realize something fundamental had shifted. Not in him, in her expectations. She circled. Bruce matched. She accelerated. Bruce stayed calm, and somewhere between clock ticks, confidence started dissolving into urgency. This was no longer about proving a point. It was about landing something. Anything. Cross came forward harder. No testing now. No patience. Her blade moved in short, violent arcs, forcing Bruce backward for the first time. Canvas slid under his feet, As he adjusted, angles tightening, exits narrowing. The operators shifted with them. The semicircle compressed. Someone bumped a chair. Bruce felt the space closing. Not panic, awareness. Cross drove a low slash toward his thigh. Bruce lifted his leg just enough. Steel passed beneath. Too close. She followed with a forward shove, using her shoulder to crowd him toward the equipment rack. Bruce absorbed it and pivoted, but his heel brushed a stray resistance band. His balance dipped, just a fraction. Enough. Cross saw it. She surged. Full pressure. Her free hand shot out and caught his sleeve. Grip tight. Intent clear. She pulled him toward the blade. Bruce twisted his torso to reduce the angle, but the motion cost him distance. His back brushed a padded column. The room tightened. Someone swore under their breath. Cross drove her knee upward, trying to break posture and open the ribs. Bruce turned his hip. The knee glanced off, still landed. Pain flared along his side. Real pain. Not symbolic. For the first time, Bruce Sipp's breathing changed. Barely, but it changed. Cross felt it. Her confidence surged back in a rush. This was familiar territory now. Pressure. Momentum. She chained attacks together, blade threatening low while her shoulder and forearm worked high, trying to overload his defenses. Bruce redirected one cut, slipped another. But the third forced him into the column again. Foam compressed behind his spine. He had nowhere left to drift. The clock clicked. Cross leaned in close enough that he could smell the mint on her breath. "This is what real resistance feels like," she said quietly. Her knife hand rose, a straight line toward his abdomen. Bruce moved late. Not slow, late. Steel brushed fabric. A shallow tear opened along his training shirt. Gasps rippled through the room. Bruce trapped her wrist with both hands and stepped sideways, but Cross twisted free and shoved him off with her shoulder. Bruce stumbled. One foot skidded. His palm slapped the mat to steady himself. He was down to 3 points of contact. For half a second, the medic took a step forward. An instructor raised a hand. Cross advanced, blade high now, ready to finish. Her face carried certainty. This was it. Bruce rose smoothly, but something had shifted. Not in his posture. In the room, they had all seen it. The near fall, the torn fabric, the moment where control almost disappeared. Cross believed she had him, and Bruce knew that belief was dangerous. He drew one slow breath, centered. Then he changed. Not with force, with timing. Bruce did not rush. He did not harden. He softened. Cross stepped in again, blade high, shoulders tight, with expectation. She believed momentum belonged to her now. She believed the opening she had created was permanent. Bruce shifted his laid foot. 3 inches. Her next slash came fast, aimed across his midline. Bruce slipped inside it, instead of away from it. The knife passed behind his hip as his forearm made light contact with her elbow. Not a block, a guide. Cross felt her balance tilt, just slightly, enough to matter. Bruce stepped through, his shoulder aligned with her center. His hips followed. Mechanical advantage replaced effort. He placed a short palm against her upper chest. Not a strike, a structure break. Cross's posture collapsed inward. Her breath caught. She tried to frame him with her free hand, but Bruce had already rotated, redirecting her wrist downward while stepping outside her lead leg. Her base disappeared. She stumbled forward. Bruce stayed with her. Not chasing, connected. He swept behind her heel with his instep and released her knife arm at the same time. The blade hit the mat with a flat sound. Everyone heard it. Cross dropped to one knee. Not thrown, placed there by physics. Bruce stepped back immediately, hands low, distance restored. Silence pressed against the walls. Cross tried to rise. Her leg trembled. She planted a hand on the mat and pushed herself upright, breathing hard now, chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm. Her eyes searched Bruce Sepp's face. Not for weakness, for explanation. Bruce waited. He always waited. She came again, bare hands this time. A straight punch followed by a wide hook, frustration leaking into form. Bruce slipped the punch, parried the hook, and answered with a compact palm under her jaw. Not full power, just alignment. Her head snapped back, her knees folded. She caught herself before falling, hands braced on her thighs, vision swimming. Bruce stepped away. Again, giving space, giving choice. Cross stood frozen, bent forward, trying to bring air back into her lungs. Copper filled her mouth. Her ears rang. Around them, no one spoke. No one moved. She straightened slowly. Her guard did not come back up. Her shoulders dropped. The fight drained out of her posture. Bruce met her eyes. His voice stayed calm. This does not need to continue. Cross swallowed. Her jaw worked. Something inside her finally let go. She lowered her hands and nodded. Once, the room exhaled together, not in relief. In recognition, they had just witnessed discipline defeat force, timing defeat pressure, restraint defeat pride. Bruce bowed slightly, not as a victor, as a teacher. Cross looked down at the knife on the mat, then back at Bruce. Her confidence was gone. Her frustration had burned itself out. All that remained was humility. Cross stood there breathing hard, hands resting on her thighs, chest rising unevenly as her nervous system tried to catch up with what had just happened. Sweat traced a line down her temple. Her jaw worked slowly, the way it did when she was fighting emotion instead of opponents. No one spoke. The operators avoided eye contact. One instructor stared at the floor. The medic stayed frozen halfway between stepping forward and staying back. Bruce waited, always waited. Cross straightened her posture with visible effort. Her shoulders came back, her spine aligned, years of command reflexes pulling her upright even when everything inside wanted to fold. She looked around the room, at the faces, at the silence. This was the moment she had promised. Her throat tightened. She cleared it once. Then again, "I misjudged him," she said. Her voice did not carry authority now. It carried honesty. A few heads lifted. Someone shifted their weight. Cross gestured toward Bruce with an open palm. That was discipline. That was control. That was timing I could not touch. She paused, swallowing hard. "I built my career on measurable performance," she continued. "Strength, endurance, scores on paper." Her eyes dropped briefly to the mat, then returned to the room. What just happened does not fit inside those boxes. Bruce remained still, hands low, expression calm. Cross turned fully toward him. Her eyes were wet, not dramatic, contained. "I pushed because I needed to know," she said quietly. "I needed to see it for myself." Bruce nodded. No judgment, just acknowledgement. She bent down and picked up the knife. This time she held it by the spine and offered the handle toward him. Bruce did not take it. He gently guided her hand downward instead. "No weapons now," he said. Cross let the blade rest on the mat. Her shoulders dropped. The fight finally left her body. She stepped back and faced the unit. Effective immediately, she announced. Close quarters training protocols would change. Reaction drills would be rebuilt. Footwork would be prioritized. Ego would not be tolerated in the room. People began nodding, quietly, respectfully. This was not an apology. This was leadership recalibrating. Bruce bowed slightly, not as someone who had won, as someone who had been heard. Cross returned the bow. Lower, slower. Around them, the tension dissolved into something heavier. Reflection. Later, operators would talk about this moment in hushed tones. Not about how fast Bruce moved, about how calmly he stopped, about how he gave space instead of taking advantage, about how strength looked different after that day. Cross met his eyes one last time. "Thank you," she said. Bruce answered with the smallest smile, and the room carried that silence forward. The room did not return to normal. Not right away. People moved differently after that. Slower, more deliberate. Operators who usually joked between drills stayed quiet as they reset the mats. One instructor rewrote the afternoon schedule on the whiteboard without saying a word. The medic packed away supplies that had never been used. Bruce sat on the edge of the mat, towel across his shoulders, breathing steady again. The shallow tear in his training shirt had darkened with sweat, a thin reminder of how close things had come. Cross stood near the equipment rack, hands folded behind her back, watching her unit reorganize. She did not interrupt. She observed. That alone told everyone something had changed. 10 minutes later, she called them together. No raised voice, no command tone, just presence. "Tomorrow," she said, "we start over." A few heads lifted. She pointed to the floor where Bruce had been standing. "Footwork first, distance control, reaction timing. No ranking by strength alone. If anyone shows ego, they sit out." No one argued. She turned toward Bruce. "If he agrees, we integrate his principles into close quarters training." Bruce nodded once. Simple. That was all it took. Later, as people filtered out, Cross approached him quietly. There was no audience now, no semicircle, no pressure. I spent years fighting to be respected, she said. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that learning is part of that. Bruce listened. She continued. Today reminded me. Bruce answered softly. Power does not come from proving, it comes from understanding. Cross absorbed that. She extended her hand. Bruce took it. Her grip was firm, steady, professional. Different from before, not testing, acknowledging. Over the next weeks, training changed. Operators began drilling angles instead of charging forward. Instructors emphasized balance before impact. Reaction timing replaced raw aggression. Even posture shifted. People started paying attention to breathing. They stopped trying to dominate space. They learned how to manage it. Those who had witnessed the exchange carried it with them, not as a story about speed or strength, as a lesson in restraint, as proof that control could outweigh force. Years later, Cross would still reference that day when mentoring younger officers. She never framed it as defeat. She called it recalibration. Bruce never spoke publicly about it. He did not need to. His influence lived in quieter places, in how people moved, in how they waited, in how they chose precision over pressure. And inside that training hall, long after the mats were replaced and the schedules rewritten, one truth remained. Strength had shown itself, not loudly, not violently, but clearly,